Chapter 1841 Join the Glorious Trial. Ichigard raised his head to look ahead, then he raised his hand and drew a huge red-colored longsword from his waist. The crimson-like Blood Knight longsword was even more massive than the two-handed greatsword used by knights, emitting an aura of destruction. That terrifying power did not erupt, but it caused people to feel a deep fear. What the octopus-type luminous creature brought to the people was an insurmountable gap. What Ichigard brought to them was a sting that could be felt on the skin. This guy had the strength to kill everyone in front of him. Until this moment, they didn't realize how foolish their initial complacency had been. Even though they had annihilated a large number of mechanical legions, thinking that they had completely grasped the situation of the battlefield, they could eliminate mechanical civilization from this world in one fell swoop. But Ichigard was still there. This existence that stood at the very apex of the Tsang Empire was the most powerful underpinning of this civilization. Die. His voice did not waver, in a language that did not belong to any language known to mankind, but every single one of them could understand what he meant from his icy, unmistakable tone. Thus, a sword blade swung out from his palm, and crimson became the only color between heaven and earth, like rainbow light emerging from the earth plane before sweeping across the entire snow plain. The power of that force was so strong that in Zhang Yi's impression, it was even enough to compete with an existence like the Hades Gatekeeper. Everyone was plunged into great despair, not even knowing how to dodge when facing this kind of power. But only Zhang Yi, he didn't hide. Even though his heart rate had already exceeded 200 at this moment, he still stood in place. It wasn't that he didn't want to go, but someone wouldn't let him go. Just as the red sword light was about to sweep across the entire battlefield, enveloping all the human powerhouses in it, a pure blue color surfaced in front of everyone's eyes like a broken ice flower. The heavens and earth changed, time seemed to be slowing down, and that bright red color began to recede, turning into a thrillingly magnificent icy blue. There were literally 6 snowflakes of blue magnificence flying through the air. Without any sound, that red-colored sword aura dissipated into the air as if by smoke. Inside Ichigard's eyes, a stunned expression finally appeared. The humans had already gone through countless shocks over the course of the time, causing them to fall into a state of complete numbness. From amongst the human camp, a person came out. She was wearing a wide, old-fashioned combat uniform, looking like a little girl who had stolen the clothes of an adult. However, when she took a step towards the front, Ichigard's sword light quickly dispersed as if it had encountered something terrifying. Since the doors of the realm have been opened, it's good to experiment some more. The young girl's cool voice drifted away far in midair with the wind. Everyone's eyes fell on her, and Zhang Yi's eyes were complicated. He hadn't thought that the Fremon's intelligence agent Ling, who had followed him for so long, had such a complicated identity. He did not know who Ling really was, and he was completely unaware of what was in front of him. His brain was in chaos, only knowing that Ling's strength was strong and her identity was amazing enough. Associating it with everything that had happened before, he profoundly realized that his sixth sense hadn't been wrong in any way. Everything that happened along the way was related to her. Even young Xinxin's ability was completely nullified against her. What happened next wasn't something any human could be involved in anymore. Ling stood before the crowd. She raised her head and eyed ahead, looking not at Ichigard, but directly past him, conversing with the Silver Knight of Cross-Masked Man. As if to make sure Zhang Yi and the others could understand, she still used the official language of Huashu Kingdom. Ichigard stared at everything in front of him in a daze, then realized something and muttered, "Another angel. Chose these weak humans?" His hand holding the sword could not help but tighten, and his expression became grave. Everything was different from what he had thought, but at this moment, many questions also unraveled in the middle of his mind. No wonder we've been searching so painstakingly with no results. But after pulling these humans down, we found the location of the doors of the realm. No, it wasn't that we found the realm doors. Rather, they allowed us to find it. The Knight of Cross looked at Ling and asked, "You chose them?" "But they are too weak." Ling said, "All existences are weak in our eyes. But it should be over. We always need to put an end to everything, don't we?" "Then let them be." Someone always needs to receive what we have. It's been too long, it's been too long. The Knight of Cross lapsed into silence for a long moment before saying, perhaps what we are doing is pointless after all. Ling replied calmly, nothing in this world was ever meant to make sense in the first place. Us, the Draconians, everything in this world. The Knight of Cross hung his head, then asked, did you find the man? Ling was silent for a while, and for some reason, Zhang Yi, who was not far away, felt as if she had looked at him even though her back was turned. Sort of, it doesn't really matter. The Knight of Cross actually brought a hint of a smile in her tone. Yeah, it really doesn't matter. After all of this will soon have nothing to do with us. The duo's conversation was clearly transmitted into the ears of everyone present. Yang Xinxin carefully savored their conversation, and Zhang Yi frowned tightly, his mind so overwhelmed that he had no idea what was happening in front of him. After Ling finished dealing with the Knight of Cross, the huge doors opened up to them. A voice rang in everyone's ears. Now, each of you can enter into the middle of this world. As long as you are able to pass the trial, you will be able to obtain great treasures that are unimaginable to you. Ling said to them in a way that humans could understand. The Knight of Cross glanced at Ichigard, now, no killing amongst yourselves. A simple, not even bothering to explain the general order. Ichigard hung his head in obedience. Zhang Yi and the other humans might not know what kind of existence Ling and the Knight of Cross were, but he was very clear. On the human camp's side, everyone had yet to recover from their shock. Zhang Yi looked at Ling and had mixed feelings in his heart. After he had come to Fremons, he had experienced many great battles and had gained tremendous gains, but that was also a great danger to the vast majority of mutants. He had always suspected that everything he did was Ling's secret guidance. Now it was confirmed that his suspicions had come true. But what was behind that massive doors, the doors that mechanical civilization would open at great cost to itself? The appearance of the doors, the appearance of Ichigard, the appearance of the powerful and mysterious creatures behind the doors, all shocked the backward and small human race. Vatican Pope Alexander X stared wide-eyed, his dead fish eyes, the pupils that were the size of grains of rice constantly contracted and dilated, his mind in a state of shock and disbelief. But in the end, he gave orders to Death Knight, Archangel Michael, Arnold Olive. Olive, go inside. Go behind that doors and take a look. That must be a divine kingdom hidden by the higher races, hiding secrets that can allow humans to evolve. After Olive received the Pope's order, he slowly nodded his head and said without the slightest hesitation, as you command, Your Holiness. He didn't rush his movements because the others hadn't reacted yet. At a time like this, it was obviously wisest to wait and see everyone before deciding to enter the doors of light together afterward. Zhang Yi looked at Ling and eventually sighed, deciding to speak up and ask her what this was all about. At least the two sides had the friendship of being together for this period of time, and the other party had stepped in to block Ichigard's attack, so it was clear that they did not want them to die. So right in front of everyone, Zhang Yi slowly walked towards the front and approached Ling. This scene watched King Arthur and the others dumbfounded. What is Chaos doing? He dares to approach that unknowable and powerful being, isn't he afraid of offending the other party and being directly obliterated? Wait, he walked up to that one, and the other party actually allowed it. Everyone's eyes widened when they saw that Zhang Yi had truly come in front of Ling. It was at this time that someone suddenly remembered and said, I seem to remember. That girl, she's been following Chaos all along. The person who said this was Newton, who pointed at Zhang Yi and Ling, and even though he was usually a serious scientist, his eyes were filled with shock at this moment. These words once again caused the crowd at the scene to go deathly silent, finding it difficult to accept such a fact. Emperor Indra lowered his head, his eyes swaying like a chaotic tide. Could it be that Chaos he is also a powerhouse from another civilization? Thinking about how he had even unself-consciously fought with Zhang Yi in the first place, Emperor Indra's back was drenched in cold sweat. Wouldn't that mean that Zhang Yi wanting to kill him was as simple as crushing an ant? Everyone's eyes changed as they looked at Zhang Yi, filled with awe. Zhang Yi, however, couldn't care less about them, because at this moment, Zhang Yi only had Ling in his eyes, this young girl who looked delicate and cute, and was as impenetrable as a fox. "Excuse me, can I trouble you to explain to me? What's going on with all this?" Ling had removed all her pretenses at this point, and she looked at Zhang Yi with an easy smile on her face. "Actually, it's not anything very complicated." With her hands in her pockets, she said indifferently, "But since you want to know, I'll explain a little bit. The praying mantis wanted to find human dwellings, so they climbed all the way out of the middle of the jungle in an arduous manner. But they were too weak to do anything about it. It so happened that they passed through the territory of ants, which are sensitive to human odors. At this time, the humans living in the neighborhood however had been observing these two creatures as they found them interesting. As the words came to this point, Zhang Yi was able to understand that the humans in Ling's words were them, the praying mantis was the existence of the mechanical civilization, and the ants were the humans on the surface of the earth. The corners of Ling's mouth hooked up slightly, and her eyes became deeper, and her tone deepened by a few points. But neither the mantis nor the ants know that a flood is coming. Human dwellings aren't safe either. Therefore, in the eyes of the humans, the efforts of both the mantis and the ants are just dying struggles. These words made Zhang Yi instantly feel a huge chill wrap itself around him. Races as powerful as the mechanical civilization were unable to maintain their own civilizations over the course of long years, and ultimately sacrificed themselves in such a way that was close to self-destruction before attracting the attention of Ling's civilization. But even then, there was still no way to avoid the plague. A flood? How could ants and praying mantises escape a great flood? Doesn't that mean that the so-called Ice Age wasn't really the end for the creatures on the surface of this planet? The real catastrophe is yet to come. It would be an even bigger, more terrifying, and more lifeless disaster. Zhang Yi's eyes shook madly as he felt a strong sense of unease. So, the mantis wants to find human dwellings in order to get shelter? Can human dwellings hold back the Great Flood? Zhang Yi asked with some anxiety. He seemed to understand something. Ling smiled bashfully, but did not answer the question directly. Just for a moment, Zhang Yi saw a flash of blankness inside her eyes, as if she was indifferent to everything. It was silence, emptiness, and indescribable loneliness. Go behind the doors. There lies the answer to everything you want. As well as, everything you want. Ling winked playfully and said to Zhang Yi. Everything we want? Zhang Yi raised an eyebrow curiously. Ling nodded, that's right, everything you guys want. Everything that creatures want to get, there is a chance for it to be fulfilled behind the doors. As long as you are able to pass its test. Zhang Yi was curious about this being. What exactly was behind the doors? Could it really fulfill all human desires? Zhang Yi was skeptical. What was desire? Desire was the meaning of life's existence. When desires are not fulfilled they are painful, and when they are fulfilled they are boring. A human's life was like a pendulum, swinging back and forth between pain and boredom. Ling's face wore a mysterious and enigmatic smile as she did not continue to say anything more, but instead, she stepped aside and opened the path to that huge doors of light to Zhang Yi. The answer to everything needs to be found by you. So now, you can choose. Zhang Yi raised his head, and the light from the oval-shaped giant doors of light shone on his face, as well as on everyone's face. They raised their heads and looked at the doors with eyes that were a mixture of pilgrimage and skepticism. Meanwhile, the top echelons of the world had blown up. They hurriedly conducted a high-level meeting to discuss their next actions, and the sound of bickering resounded through the top echelons of every kingdom and organization. What exactly was behind the doors of light? Whether or not to risk a huge amount of money and allow a country's top battle force to enter it and explore it had all become a topic of contention for them. That is the existence of a higher civilization, one that far exceeds the higher civilizations of humanity. There is an opportunity here for us to obtain their technology. Even getting just a little bit of it is enough to raise the human civilization's technology to an unimaginable level. Even a civilization like the mechanical civilization, which has surpassed us by many years, has gone to great lengths to try to find the place, so what reason do we have to not go? However, the risk behind this is too great. Can't you see that? Even the most powerful weapons of mankind are like toys to them, unable to do anything. There's a high probability that our epsilon will be killed if it enters them. The consequences of such a loss are too heavy for us to bear. But if we don't go, in case other kingdoms enter it and gain benefits. In the future, on the international stage, there will no longer be a voice for us. At times like this, if you can't be at the table, you'll have to be on the menu. Fremons, Franklin State. In the laboratory of the Natural Science Association, the scientist Da Vinci, wearing a white lab coat with a head of messy hair, stared at the light doors in the middle of the image with those dead fish eyes. He called the communication to Fremon's top management and said directly, "This operation, Fremons must participate." Hiccup. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Perhaps we will be able to peek into the secrets of the higher civilization's existence to this day. Hiccup. This is very helpful for us to become stronger so that we can survive in the midst of the end times and preserve our civilization. In Xinjiang, Ho-Tu, Xidagarba King and Supreme Commander of the Xinjiang region, Meng Yuanjun, were also discussing this matter. Ho-Tu's eyes shook as she entertained the idea of going forward. But she was quickly stopped by Meng Yuanjun. Meng Yuanjun advised, "It's not that I don't believe in your strength, but your abilities are more suitable for sitting on one side to defend. And now that Huashu Kingdom's 2 archbishop-level mutants, chaos is already in that place. If you were to go over there as well, it would be like putting your eggs in one basket. This kind of move is too dangerous." Ho-Tu's black eyes shook. "However, I also want to explore the secrets of the higher civilizations. There's a vague realization that tells me that it's important." Shang Daowen smiled faintly and advised from the side, "Instead of trying to understand Chernobyl, which we are unfamiliar with, why don't we study the Ling Mountain underground dragons? The fact that they once stepped in to help us can at least prove that they have goodwill towards us, or at least no malice. If we can obtain their help, it may not be worse than the benefits of traveling to Chernobyl." After several people discussed for a long time, they eventually also decided to play it safe and Ho-Tu would no longer leave the capital. The top echelons of each country were all in heated discussions, but in the end, the results were all pretty much the same. Faced with such a major opportunity, they were willing to go ahead and take the risk of letting their own country's mutants try it out. While the human side was still communicating with the higher-ups, Ichigard had already gone over to assist Lori Deck, and the two of them walked towards the doors of light. The Knight of Crossmask as well as those glowing octopus-type creatures guarded the doors and did not make any movements towards them, quiet as if they were stone statues. Zhang Yi instead conferred with the crowd. "I think it's still necessary to go, it's just that it's not clear what's waiting for us. It will inevitably be a bit unsettling. What do you guys think about this matter?" At this moment, Zhang Yi was facing a completely unknown and powerful existence. Having seen the strike of the creature behind the doors of light with his own eyes, he did not even have absolute confidence in his own abilities. Even the feeling Ling and the Knight of Cross brought to him was more powerful than the Hades Gatekeeper or even White Dragon. It wasn't a soul-shattering feeling anymore, but a height that was completely indescribable and unattainable. He even felt that if Ling or the Knight of Cross wanted to kill himself, it would be effortless. No, even those glowing octopus-type creatures could sweep through all the kingdoms of mankind. Fatty Sue spoke impatiently, "Boss, let's go take a look. Isn't Ms. Ling one of us? If we go over there, she'll have to cover us as well." Zhang Yi sighed, "Easy for you to say. Right now, it seems that she is not human at all, but just an observer who mixed into the human race after the end of the world." Speaking here, Zhang Yi glanced at Deng Shintong. That look implied clearly, "You were the one who picked the person." Deng Shintong touched his nose somewhat awkwardly and smiled helplessly and bitterly, "An existence of this level, everything she does is out of her will. I thought I picked the person, but in reality, she picked me." He spread both hands. "What can I do?" Zhang Yi nodded, acknowledging this fact. It was indeed easy for humans to want to make fun of ants and praying mantises. One should know that even Yang Xinxin, a rules category ability user, had her rules nullified against Ling. The height of its biological level had reached a point that Zhang Yi could not imagine. Zhang Yi was torn, and in the end, he still turned his gaze to Yang Xinxin. Of all the people, she was the smartest and calmest one, and she was able to give excellent advice to Zhang Yi in many times when he couldn't make up his mind. Yang Xinxin had been silently pondering over the pros and cons of the matter. It was only after hearing Zhang Yi's inquiry and seeing the probing gazes of the crowd that she slowly opened her mouth and said, "From Ling's words, we can get such a possibility. After entering the doors of light, it is to undergo a test from their civilization, what we will tentatively call a mighty god-level civilization." She slowly raised a finger. "The words Ling just spoke express the current situation facing our three races. Mantises are stronger than ants and can see farther, so they know that a flood is coming, and so they want to find human dwellings to seek refuge. But human dwellings are not always able to hold back the great flood. They open the doors, not to be found by the praying mantis and ants, but just to see the praying mantis and ants fighting and find it interesting. And opening the doors gives us an equal chance. Because to them, both mantises and ants are bugs, existences that can be obliterated with their hands. Then, what exactly does the trial want to do?" Yang Xinxin's gaze began to brighten. "We're not bugs after all, we're a civilized race on this planet that can evolve and possess unlimited potential. So perhaps they are trying to find hope in us. The hope to exist in the midst of the end times." Zhang Yi's thoughts were also slowly opened up, and the crowd nodded their heads, mentally mulling over Yang Xinxin's words, feeling inspired.